Sun Tzu and the Art of War. Chapter 1. Laying Plans. Sun Tzu said, "The art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. Hence, it is a subject of inquiry which can on no account be neglected. The art of war is governed by 5 constant factors to be taken into account in one's deliberations when seeking to determine the conditions obtaining in the field. These are: 1. The moral law. 2. Heaven. 3. Earth. 4. The commander. 5. Method and discipline. The moral law causes the people to be in complete accord with their ruler, so that they will follow him regardless of their lives, undismayed by any danger. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. Earth comprises distances great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. By method and discipline, the marshalling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the graduations of rank among the officers, the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army, and the control of military expenditure are understood. These 5 heads should be familiar to every general. He who knows them will be victorious. He who knows them not will fail. Therefore, in your deliberations, when seeking to determine the military conditions, let them be made the basis of a comparison in this wise. 1. Which of the 2 sovereigns is imbued with the moral law? 2. Which of the 2 generals has the most ability? 3. With whom let the advantages derived from heaven and earth lie? 4. On which side is discipline most rigorously enforced? 5. Which army is stronger? 6. On which side are officers and men more highly trained? 7. In which army is there the greater constancy, both in reward and punishment? By means of these 7 considerations, I can forecast victory or defeat. The general who hearkens to my counsel and acts upon it will conquer. Let such a one be retained in command. The general who hearkens not to my counsel nor acts upon it will suffer defeat. Let such a one be dismissed. While heeding the profit of my counsel, avail yourselves also of any helpful circumstances over and beyond the ordinary rules. Accordingly, as circumstances are favorable, one should modify one's plans. All warfare is based on deception. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. Hold out baits to entice the enemy, feign disorder, and crush him. If he is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. If your opponent is of a choleric temper, seek to irritate him. Pretend to be weak that he may grow arrogant. If he is taking his ease, give him no rest. If his forces are united, separate them. Attack him when he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected. These military devices leading to victory must not be divulged beforehand. Now, the general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses a battle makes but few calculations beforehand. Thus, do many calculations lead to victory, and few calculations to defeat? How much more, no calculation at all? It is by attention to this point that I can foresee who is likely to win or lose. Chapter 2. Waging War. Sun Tzu said, "In the operations of war, where there are in the field 1,000 swift chariots, as many heavy chariots, and 100,000 mail-clad soldiers with provisions enough to carry them 1,000 lie. The expenditure at home and at the front, including entertainment of guests, small items such as glue and paint, and some spent on chariots and armor, will reach the total of 1,000 ounces of silver per day. Such is the cost of raising an army of 100,000 men. When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, then men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be damped. If you lay siege to a town, you will exhaust your strength. Again, if the campaign is protracted, the resources of the state will not be equal to the strain. Now, when your weapons are dulled, your ardor damped, your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue. Thus, though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged war. It is only one who is thoroughly acquainted with the evils of war that can thoroughly understand the profitable way of carrying it on. A skillful soldier does not raise a second levy, neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice. Bring war material with you from home, but forage on the enemy. Thus, the army will have food enough for its needs. Poverty of the state exchequer causes an army to be maintained by contributions from a distance. Contributing to maintain an army at a distance causes the people to be impoverished. On the other hand, the proximity of an army causes prices to go up, and high prices cause the people's substance to be drained away. When their substance is drained away, the peasantry will be afflicted by heavy exactions. With this loss of substance and exhaustion of strength, the homes of the people will be stripped bare, and 3/10 of their income will be dissipated, while government expenses for broken chariots, worn-out horses, breastplates and helmets, bows and arrows, spears and shields, protective mantles, draft oxen, and heavy wagons will amount to 4/10 of its total revenue. Hence, a wise general makes a point of foraging on the enemy. 1 cartload of the enemy's provisions is equivalent to 20 of one's own, and likewise, a single pickle from his provender is equal to 20 from one's own store. Now, in order to kill the enemy, our men must be roused to anger. That there may be advantage from defeating the enemy, they must have their rewards. Therefore, in chariot fighting, when 10 or more chariots have been taken, those should be rewarded who took the first. Our own flag should be substituted for those of the enemy, and the chariots mingled and used in conjunction with our own. The captured soldiers should be kindly treated and kept. This is called using the conquered foe to augment one's own strength. In war, then, let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. Thus, it may be known that the leader of armies is the arbiter of the people's fate, the man on whom it depends whether the nation shall be in peace or in peril. Chapter 3. Attack by Stratagem. Sun Tzu said, "In the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shout and destroy it is not so good. So too it is better to recapture an army entire than to destroy it, to capture a regiment, a detachment, or a company entire than to destroy them. Hence, to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Thus, the highest form of generalship is to balk the enemy's plans. The next best is to prevent the junction of the enemy's forces. The next in order is to attack the enemy's army in the field. And the worst policy of all is to besiege walled cities. The rule is not to besiege walled cities if it can possibly be avoided. The preparation of mantlets, movable shelters, and various implements of war will take up 3 whole months, and the piling up of mounds against the walls will take 3 months more. The general, unable to control his irritation, will launch his men to the assault like swarming ants, with the result that 1/3 of his men are slain, while the town still remains untaken. Such are the disastrous effects of a siege. Therefore, the skilled leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. With his forces intact, he will dispute the mastery of the empire, and thus, without losing a man, his triumph will be complete. This is the method of attacking by stratagem. It is the rule in war. If our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1, to surround him. If 5 to 1, to attack him. If twice as numerous, to divide our army into 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle. If slightly inferior in numbers, we can avoid the enemy. If quite unequal in every way, we can flee from him. Hence, though an obstinate fight may be made by a small force, in the end, it must be captured by the larger force. Now, the general is the bulwark of the state. If the bulwark is complete at all points, the state will be strong. If the bulwark is defective, the state will be weak. There are 3 ways in which a ruler can bring misfortune upon his army: by commanding the army to advance or retreat, being ignorant of the fact that it cannot obey. This is called hobbling the army. By attempting to govern an army in the same way as he administers a kingdom, being ignorant of the conditions which obtain in an army. This causes restlessness in the soldiers' minds. By employing the officers of his army without discrimination, through ignorance of the military principle of adaptation to circumstances. This shakes the confidence of the soldiers. But when the army is restless and distrustful, trouble is sure to come from the other feudal princes. This is simply bringing anarchy into the army and flinging victory away. Thus, we may know that there are 5 essentials for victory. 1. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. 2. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. 3. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. 4. He will win who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. 5. He will win who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign. Hence, the saying, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle." Chapter 4. Tactical Dispositions. Sun Tzu said, "The good fighters of old first put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat and then waited for an opportunity of defeating the enemy." To secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. Thus, the good fighter is able to secure himself against defeat, but cannot make certain of defeating the enemy. Hence the saying, "One may know how to conquer without being able to do it." Security against defeat implies defensive tactics. Ability to defeat the enemy means taking the offensive. Standing on the defensive indicates insufficient strength, attacking a superabundance of strength. The general who is skilled in defense hides in the most secret recesses of the earth. He who is skilled in attack flashes, falls from the topmost heights of heaven. Thus, on one hand, we have the ability to protect ourselves. On the other, a victory that is complete. To see victory only when it is within the reach of the common herd is not the acme of excellence. Neither is it the acme of excellence if you fight and conquer, and the whole empire says, "Well done." To lift an autumn hair is no sign of great strength. To see the sun and moon is no sign of sharp sight. To hear the noise of thunder is no sign of a quick ear. What the ancients called a clever fighter is one who not only wins, but excels in winning with ease. Hence his victories bring him neither reputation for wisdom nor credit for courage. He wins his battles by making no mistakes. Making no mistakes is what establishes the certainty of victory, for it means conquering an enemy that is already defeated. Hence, the skillful fighter puts himself into a position which makes defeat impossible and does not miss the moment for defeating the enemy. Thus, it is that in war, the victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won, whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory. The consummate leader cultivates the moral law and strictly adheres to method and discipline. Thus, it is in his power to control success. In respect of military method, we have, firstly, measurement, secondly, estimation of quantity, thirdly, calculation, fourthly, balancing of chances, and fifthly, victory. Measurement owes its existence to earth, estimation of quantity to measurement, calculation to estimation of quantity, balancing of chances to calculation, and victory to balancing of chances. A victorious army opposed to a routed one is as a pound weight placed in a scale against a single grain. The onrush of a conquering force is like the bursting of pent-up waters into a chasm 1,000 fathoms deep. Chapter 5. Energy. Sun Tzu said that controlling a large force is similar to controlling a few men. It's a matter of dividing their numbers. Whether you command a large or small army, the difference lies in implementing signs and signals. The goal is to ensure that your entire host can withstand the enemy's attack and remain unshaken. This can be achieved through both direct and indirect maneuvers. By employing these tactics, the impact of your army can be likened to a grindstone striking an egg. This effectiveness is achieved through understanding the science of weak and strong points. While direct methods can be used to engage in battle, victory often requires the use of indirect methods. Indirect tactics, when applied efficiently, are inexhaustible, like the heavens, earth, rivers, and streams. They end and begin anew, just like the cycles of the sun, moon, and seasons. Although there are only 5 musical notes, their combinations give rise to countless melodies. Similarly, the combination of 5 primary colors, blue, yellow, red, white, and black, produces an array of hues. The same principle applies to tastes, where combinations of sour, acrid, salt, sweet, and bitter create various flavors. In battles, there are essentially 2 methods of attack, direct and indirect. However, the combination of these 2 methods leads to an endless series of maneuvers. The direct and indirect approaches complement each other, forming a circle without an end. The possibilities of their combination are inexhaustible. The onset of troops is akin to the rush of a torrent, capable of even rolling stones along its path. The quality of decision-making is comparable to the well-timed swoop of a falcon, enabling it to strike and destroy its prey. Therefore, a skilled fighter will be formidable in their attack and swift in their decision-making. Energy can be likened to the bending of a crossbow, while decision-making is akin to releasing the trigger. Amid the chaos of battle, there may appear to be disorder, but in reality, there is none. Even if your formation lacks a clear head or tail, it can still withstand defeat. Simulated disorder relies on perfect discipline. Feigned fear necessitates courage, and pretended weakness presupposes strength. Concealing order amidst apparent disorder is a matter of strategic subdivision. Masking strength with weakness involves tactical dispositions. A skillful commander keeps the enemy on the move by maintaining deceptive appearances, which influence the enemy's actions. By sacrificing something for the enemy to seize, they can keep them in motion. Then, with a select force, they lie in wait for the enemy. A competent leader understands the impact of combined energy and doesn't burden individuals excessively. They have the ability to identify the right men and harness their combined energy. When this energy is utilized, the fighting force becomes unstoppable, like rolling logs or stones. Just as a log or stone remains still on level ground but moves when on a slope, the energy of skilled fighters propels them forward. Thus, the energy developed by capable warriors is like the momentum of a round stone rolling down a towering mountain. It gathers strength as it descends thousands of feet. This concludes Sun Tzu's teachings on the subject of energy. Chapter 6. Weak Points and Strong. Sun Tzu said, "Whoever is first in the field and awaits the coming of the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever is second in the field and has to hasten to battle will arrive exhausted." Therefore, the clever combatant imposes his will on the enemy, but does not allow the enemy's will to be imposed on him. By holding out advantages to him, he can cause the enemy to approach of his own accord. Or by inflicting damage, he can make it impossible for the enemy to draw near. If the enemy is taking his ease, he can harass him. If well supplied with food, he can starve him out. If quietly encamped, he can force him to move. Appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected. An army may march great distances without distress if it marches through country where the enemy is not. You can be sure of succeeding in your attacks if you only attack places which are undefended. You can ensure the safety of your defense if you only hold positions that cannot be attacked. Hence, that general is skillful in attack whose opponent does not know what to defend, and he is skillful in defense whose opponent does not know what to attack. Know divine art of subtlety and secrecy. Through you we learn to be invisible, through you inaudible, and hence we can hold the enemy's fate in our hands. You may advance and be absolutely irresistible if you make for the enemy's weak points. You may retire and be safe from pursuit if your movements are more rapid than those of the enemy. If we wish to fight, the enemy can be forced to an engagement, even though he be sheltered behind a high rampart and a deep ditch. All we need to do is attack some other place that he will be obliged to relieve. If we do not wish to fight, we can prevent the enemy from engaging us, even though the lines of our encampment be merely traced out on the ground. All we need to do is to throw something odd and unaccountable in his way. By discovering the enemy's dispositions and remaining invisible ourselves, we can keep our forces concentrated while the enemy must be divided. We can form a single united body while the enemy must split up into fractions. Hence, there will be a whole pitted against separate parts of a whole, which means that we shall be many to the enemy's few. And if we are able thus to attack an inferior force with the superior one, our opponents will be in dire straits. The spot where we intend to fight must not be made known, for then the enemy will have to prepare against a possible attack at several different points, and his forces being thus distributed in many directions, the numbers we shall have to face at any given point will be proportionately few. Should the enemy strengthen his van, he will weaken his rear. Should he strengthen his rear, he will weaken his van. Should he strengthen his left, he will weaken his right. Should he strengthen his right, he will weaken his left. If he sends reinforcements everywhere, he will everywhere be weak. Numerical weakness comes from having to prepare against possible attacks. Numerical strength from compelling our adversary to make these preparations against us. Knowing the place and the time of the coming battle, we may concentrate from the greatest distances in order to fight. But if neither time nor place be known, then the left wing will be impotent to succor the right, the right equally impotent to succor the left, the van unable to relieve the rear, or the rear to support the van. How much more so if the furthest portions of the army are anything under 100 li apart, and even the nearest are separated by several li. Though according to my estimate, The soldiers away exceed our own number, that shall advantage them nothing in the matter of victory. I say then that victory can be achieved, though the enemy be stronger in numbers. We may prevent him from fighting schemes as to discover his plans and the likelihood of their success. Arouse him and learn the principle of his activity or inactivity. Force him to reveal himself so as to find out his vulnerable spots. Carefully compare the opposing army with your own, so that you may know where strength is superabundant and where it is deficient. In making tactical dispositions, the highest pitch you can attain is to conceal them. Conceal your dispositions, and you will be safe from the prying of the subtlest spies, from the machinations of the wisest brains. How victory may be produced for them out of the enemy's own tactics, that is what the multitude cannot comprehend. All men can see the tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. Do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by the infinite variety of circumstances. Military tactics are like underwater, for water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak. Water shapes its course according to the nature of the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe whom he is facing. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. He who can modify his tactics in relation to his opponent and thereby succeed in winning may be called a heaven-born captain. The 5 elements, water, fire, wood, metal, earth, is not always equally predominant. The 4 seasons make way for each other in turn. There are short days and long. The moon has its periods of waning and waxing. Chapter 7. Manoeuvring. Sun Tzu said, "In war, the general receives his command from the sovereign. Having collected an army and concentrated his forces, he must blend and harmonize the different elements thereof before pitching his camp. After that comes tactical maneuvering, than which there is nothing more difficult. The difficulty of tactical maneuvering consists in turning the devious into the direct and misfortune into gain. To take a long and circuitous route after enticing the enemy out of the way, and those starting after him to contrive to reach the goal before him, shows knowledge of the artifice of deviation. Maneuvering with an army is advantageous, with an undisciplined multitude most dangerous. If you set a fully equipped army in march in order to snatch an advantage, the chances are that you will be too late. On the other hand, to detach a flying column for the purpose involves the sacrifice of its baggage and stores. Thus, if you order your men to roll up their buff coats and make forced marches without halting day or night, covering double the usual distance at a stretch, doing 100 lie in order to wrest an advantage, the leaders of all your 3 divisions will fall into the hands of the enemy. The stronger men will be in front, the jaded ones will fall behind, and on this plan, only 1/10 of your army will reach its destination. If you march 50 li in order to outmaneuver the enemy, you will lose the leader of your 1st division, and only half your force will reach the goal. If you march 30 li with the same object, 2/3 of your army will arrive. We may take it then that an army without its baggage train is lost. Without provisions, it is lost. Without a basis of supply, it is lost. We cannot enter into an alliance until we are acquainted with the designs of our neighbors. We are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the face of the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps. We shall be unable to turn natural advantage to account unless we make use of local guides. In war, practice dissimulation, and you will succeed. Whether to concentrate or to divide your troops must be decided by circumstances. Let your rapidity be that of the wind, your compactness that of the forest. In raiding and plundering, be like fire. Immovability is like a mountain. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. When you plunder a countryside, let the spoil be divided amongst your men. When you capture new territory, cut it up into allotments for the benefit of the soldiery. Ponder and deliberate before you make a move. He will conquer who has learned the artifice of deviation. Such is the art of maneuvering. The Book of Army Management says, "On the field of battle, the spoken word does not carry far enough." Hence the institution of gongs and drums. Nor can ordinary objects be seen clearly enough. Hence the institution of banners and flags. Gongs and drums, banners and flags, are meaning whereby the ears and eyes of the host may be focused on one particular point. The host thus forming a single united body, it is impossible either for the brave to advance alone or for the cowardly to retreat alone. This is the art of handling large masses of men. In night fighting, then, make much use of signal fires and drums, and in fighting by day, use flags and banners as a means of influencing the ears and eyes of your army. The whole army may be robbed of its spirit. A commander-in-chief may be robbed of his presence of mind. Now, a soldier's spirit is keenest in the morning. By noonday, it has begun to flag, and in the evening, his mind is bent only on returning to camp. A clever general, therefore, avoids an army when the spirit is keen, but attacks it when it is sluggish and inclined to return. This is the art of studying moods, disciplined and calm to await the appearance of disorder and hubbub amongst the enemy. This is the art of retaining self-possession. To be near the goal while the enemy is still far from it. To wait at ease while the enemy is toiling and struggling. To be well fed while the enemy is famished. This is the art of husbanding one's strength. To refrain from intercepting an enemy whose banners are in perfect order. To refrain from attacking an army drawn up in calm and confident array. This is the art of studying circumstances. It is a military axiom not to advance uphill against the enemy, nor to oppose him when he comes downhill. Do not pursue an enemy who simulates flight. Do not attack soldiers whose temper is keen. Do not swallow bait offered by the enemy. Do not interfere with an army that is returning home. When you surround an army, leave an outlet free. Do not press a desperate foe too hard. Such is the art of warfare. Chapter 8. Variation in Tactics. Sun Tzu said, "In war, the general receives his commands from the sovereign, collects his army, and concentrates his forces. When in difficult country, do not encamp in a country where high roads intersect. Join hands with your allies. Do not linger in dangerously isolated positions. In hemmed-in situations, you must resort to stratagem. In a desperate position, you must fight. There are roads which must not be followed, armies which must not be attacked, towns which must be besieged, positions which must not be contested, and commands of the sovereign which must not be obeyed. The general who thoroughly understands the advantages that accompany variation of tactics knows how to handle his troops. The general who does not understand these may be well acquainted with the configuration of the country, yet he will not be able to turn his knowledge to practical account. So the student of war who is unversed in the art of varying his plans, even though he be acquainted with the 5 advantages, will fail to make the best use of his men. Hence, in the wise leader's plans, considerations of advantage and disadvantage will be blended together. If our expectation of advantage be tempered in this way, we may succeed in accomplishing the essential part of our schemes. If, on the other hand, in the midst of difficulties, we We are always ready to seize an advantage. We may extricate ourselves from misfortune, reduce the hostile chiefs by inflicting damage on them, and make trouble for them and keep them constantly engaged. Hold out specious aldermans and make them rush to any given point. The art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemy not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him, not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather on the fact that we have made our position unassailable. There are 5 dangerous faults which may affect a general. 1. Recklessness, which leads to destruction. 2. Cowardice, which leads to capture. 3. A hasty temper which can be provoked by insults. 4. A delicacy of honor which is sensitive to shame. And 5. Over-solicitude for his men which exposes him to worry and trouble. These are the 5 besetting sins of a general, ruinous to the conduct of war. When an army is overthrown and its leader slain, the cause will surely be found among these 5 dangerous faults. Let them be the subject of meditation. Chapter 9. The Army on the March. Sun Tzu said, "We come now to the question of encamping the army and observing signs of the enemy. Pass quickly over mountains and keep in the neighborhood of valleys. Camp in high places facing the sun. Do not climb heights in order to fight. So much for mountain warfare. After crossing a river, you should get far away from it. When an invading force crosses a river in its onward march, do not advance to meet it midstream. It will be best to let half the army get across and then deliver your attack. If you are anxious to fight, you should not go to meet the invader near a river which he has to cross. Move your craft higher up than the enemy and facing the sun. Do not move upstream to meet the enemy. So much for river warfare. In crossing salt marshes, your sole concern should be to get over them quickly without any delay. If forced to fight in a salt marsh, you should have water and grass near you and get your back to a clump of trees. So much for operations in salt marshes. In dry, level country, take up an easily accessible position with rising ground to your right and on your rear, so that the danger may be in front and safety lie behind. So much for campaigning in flat country. These are 4 useful branches of military knowledge which enabled the Yellow Emperor to vanquish 4 several sovereigns. All armies prefer high ground to low and sunny places to dark. If you are careful with your men and camp on hard ground, the army will be free from disease of every kind, and this will spell victory. When you come to a hill or a bank, occupy the sunny side with the slope on your right rear. Thus you will at once act for the benefit of your soldiers and utilize the natural advantages of the ground. When, in consequence of heavy rains up country, a river which you wish to ford is swollen and flecked with foam, you must wait till it subsides. Country in which there are precipitous cliffs with torrents running between, deep natural hollows, confined places, tangled thickets, quagmires, and crevices should be left with all possible speed and not approached. While we keep away from such places, we should get the enemy to approach them. While we face them, we should let the enemy have them on its rear. If in the neighborhood of your camp there should be any hidden country, ponds surrounded by aquatic grass, hollow basins filled with reeds, or woods with thick undergrowth, they must be carefully routed out and searched for. These are places where men in ambush or insidious spies are likely to be lurking. When the enemy is close at hand and remains quiet, he is relying on the natural strength of his position. When he keeps aloof and tries to provoke a battle, he is anxious for the other side to advance. If his place of encampment is easy of access, he is tendering a bait. Movement amongst the trees of a forest shows that the enemy is advancing. The appearance of a number of screens in the midst of thick grass means that the enemy wants to make us suspicious. The rising of birds in flight is the sign of an ambuscade. startled beasts indicate that a sudden attack is coming. When there is dust rising in a high column, it is the sign of chariots advancing. When the dust is low but spread over a wide area, it betokens the approach of infantry. When it branches out in different directions, it shows that parties have been sent to collect firewood. A few clouds of dust moving to and fro signify that the army is encamping. Humble words and increased preparations are signs that the enemy is about to advance. Violent language and driving forward as if to attack are signs that he will retreat. When the light chariots come out first and take up a position on the wings, it is a sign that the enemy is forming for battle. Peace proposals unaccompanied by a sworn covenant indicate a plot. When there is much running about and the soldiers fall into rank, it means that the critical moment has come. When some are seen advancing and some retreating, it is a lure. When the soldiers stand leaning on their spears, they are faint from want of food. If those who are sent to draw water begin by drinking themselves, the army is suffering from thirst. If the enemy sees an advantage to be gained and makes no effort to secure it, the soldiers are exhausted. If birds gather on any spot, it is unoccupied. Clamor by night betokens nervousness. If there is a disturbance in the camp, the general's authority is weak. If the banners and flags are shifted about, sedition is afoot. If the officers are angry, it means the men are weary. When an army feeds its horses with grain and kills its cattle for food, and when the men do not hang their chapter 10. Terrain Sun Tzu said, "The art of war recognizes 5 fundamental factors that affect warfare: the Tao, or moral influence, the heaven, or climate, the earth, or terrain, the commander, or leadership, and method and discipline, or organization. Of these 5 factors, the earth is the most important. It is the foundation of all operations and the key to victory. Therefore, a thorough understanding of the terrain is crucial for military success." There are several types of terrain that can be encountered in warfare. They include open ground, intersecting ground, difficult ground, encircled ground, and deadly ground. Open ground is where there is no advantage to either side and no obstacles to impede movement. It is the most favorable terrain for engaging the enemy and allows for flexibility in tactics. Intersecting ground refers to areas where several routes converge. It is advantageous to hold this type of terrain as it allows for control over multiple avenues of approach and the ability to threaten the enemy from different directions. Difficult ground is characterized by natural or man-made obstacles that hinder movement. Such obstacles can include mountains, rivers, swamps, or dense forests. When faced with difficult ground, it is important to carefully analyze the situation and adapt tactics accordingly. Encircled ground is when an army finds itself surrounded by the enemy. This is a dangerous situation that requires skillful maneuvering and resourcefulness to break out of the encirclement or hold the position until reinforcements arrive. Deadly ground refers to situations where an army has its back against a metaphorical wall with no escape route. When faced with deadly ground, soldiers are highly motivated to fight for their lives. This type of terrain should be avoided whenever possible, as it can lead to desperate and unpredictable actions from both sides. Understanding the terrain also involves studying the local weather and climate. The weather can have a significant impact on military operations, affecting visibility, mobility, and the performance of weapons and equipment. It is important to consider the weather conditions when planning and executing military campaigns. Furthermore, the terrain can be used to one's advantage by exploiting its natural features. This can include using hills and ridges for defensive positions, rivers and waterways for transportation and supply lines, and forests and jungles for concealment and ambushes. To effectively utilize the terrain, A commander must conduct thorough reconnaissance to gather information about the topography and features of the battlefield. This can be done through aerial reconnaissance, scouting parties, maps, and local intelligence sources. Once the terrain has been assessed, the commander can develop a strategy that maximizes the advantages provided by the terrain and minimizes the risks and vulnerabilities. This may involve selecting favorable defensive positions, identifying key choke points, or setting up ambushes in areas of dense vegetation. In addition to the physical aspects of the terrain, the commander must also consider the psychological impact it can have on both friendly and enemy forces. For example, defending a high ground position can boost the morale of the defenders while demoralizing the attackers. In conclusion, the earth or terrain plays a vital role in warfare. Understanding its features, leveraging its advantages, and mitigating its challenges are essential for success on the battlefield. A skilled commander who masters the art of terrain can turn the most difficult situations into opportunities for victory. Chapter 10: Terrain. Sun Tzu said that there are 6 kinds of terrain that can be distinguished. The first is accessible ground, which can be freely traversed by both sides. When facing such ground, it is advantageous to be before the enemy, occupying raised and sunny spots and carefully guarding the line of supplies. This allows for fighting with an advantage. The second kind of terrain is entangling ground, which can be abandoned but is hard to reoccupy. From a position of this sort, if the enemy is unprepared, one may sally forth and defeat them. However, if the enemy is prepared and you fail to defeat them, returning becomes impossible and disasters will ensue. Temporizing ground is the third type of terrain. In a position like this, neither side will gain an advantage by making the first move. It is advisable to retreat and entice the enemy to come out. Then, when part of their army has come out, you may deliver an attack with advantage. Narrow passes represent the fourth type of terrain. If you can occupy them first, they should be strongly garrisoned while awaiting the arrival of the enemy. If the enemy has already occupied a pass, it is better to retreat unless it is weakly garrisoned. The fifth kind of terrain is precipitous heights. If you are ahead of your adversary, it is beneficial to occupy the raised and sunny spots and wait for the enemy to come up. If the enemy has already occupied these spots, it is best to retreat and try to entice them away. The last type of terrain is positions at a great distance from the enemy. When the strength of the two armies is equal and they are far apart, provoking a battle becomes difficult, and fighting will be to your disadvantage. These 6 principles connected with the earth should be carefully studied by a general who has attained a responsible post. Now, an army is exposed to 6 calamities that are the responsibility of the general and not arising from natural causes. These calamities are flight, insubordination, collapse, ruin, disorganization, and rout. Flight occurs when one force is hurled against another 10 times its size, resulting in the flight of the smaller force. Insubordination happens when the common soldiers are too strong and their officers too weak, leading to a lack of discipline. Collapse occurs when the officers are too strong and the common soldiers too weak, resulting in a breakdown of the army's organization. Ruin takes place when higher officers act independently, engaging the enemy without proper authorization, which can lead to disastrous consequences. Disorganization occurs when the general is weak and without authority, orders are unclear, and duties are not properly assigned, causing chaos within the ranks. Rout happens when a general fails to estimate the enemy's strength and allows an inferior force to engage a larger one, neglecting to place skilled soldiers in the front ranks. A responsible general should carefully note these 6 ways of courting defeat. The natural formation of the country is a soldier's best ally. However, the ability to estimate the adversary, control the forces of victory, and calculate difficulties, dangers, and distances is what constitutes a great general. A great general who possesses this knowledge and puts it into practice will win battles. On the other hand, one who lacks this knowledge and fails to apply it will surely be defeated. If fighting is certain to result in victory, then one must fight, even if the ruler forbids it. Conversely, if fighting will not lead to victory, then one must not fight, even if ordered to do so by the ruler. The general who advances without seeking fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose sole focus is to protect the country and serve their sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. By regarding your soldiers as your children, they will follow you into the deepest valleys. Treating them as your own beloved sons, they will stand by you even unto death. However, if you are indulgent but unable to enforce your commands or quell disorder, your soldiers will become spoiled children and be useless for practical purposes. If you know that your own men are prepared to attack but are unaware that the enemy is not open to attack, you have only gone halfway towards victory. Similarly, if you know that the enemy is open to attack but are unaware that your own men are not ready to attack, you have only gone halfway towards victory. Even if you know both of these factors, but are unaware that the nature of the ground makes fighting impractical, you have still only gone halfway towards victory. Hence, an experienced soldier, once in motion, is never bewildered. Once they have broken camp, they are never at a loss. The saying goes, if you know the enemy and know yourself, your victory will not stand in doubt. If you know heaven and know earth, you may make your victory complete. Chapter 11, The 9 Situations. Sun Tzu said, "The art of war recognizes 9 varieties of ground. They are as follows. 1. Dispersion ground. When a chieftain is fighting in his own territory, it is dispersive ground. 2. Facile ground. When he has penetrated into hostile territory but to no great distance, it is facile ground. 3. Contentious ground. Ground, the possession of which imports great advantage to either side, is contentious ground. Open ground. Ground on which each side has liberty of movement is open ground. 4. Ground of intersecting highways. Ground which forms the key to 3 contiguous states, so that he who occupies it first has most of the empire at his command, is ground of intersecting highways. 5. Serious ground. When an army has penetrated into the heart of a hostile country, leaving a number of fortified cities in its rear, it is serious ground. 6. Difficult ground. Mountain forests, rugged steeps, marshes, and fen country that is hard to traverse. This is difficult ground. 7. Hemmed-in ground. Ground which is reached through narrow gorges and from which we can only retire by tortuous paths, so that a small number of the enemy would suffice to crush a large body of our men. This is hemmed-in ground. 8. Desperate ground. Ground on which we can only be saved from destruction by fighting without delay is desperate ground. In different situations, the following principles should be observed. On dispersive ground, do not fight. On facile ground, do not halt. On contentious ground, do not attack. On open ground, do not try to block the enemy's way. On ground of intersecting highways, join hands with your allies. On serious ground, gather in plunder. On difficult ground, keep steadily on the march. On hemmed-in ground, resort to stratagem. On desperate ground, fight. Those who are called skillful leaders of old knew how to drive a wedge between the enemy's front and rear, to prevent cooperation between his large and small divisions, and to hinder the good troops from rescuing the bad, the officers from rallying their men. When the enemy's men were united, they managed to keep them in disorder. When it was to their advantage, they made a forward move. When otherwise, they stopped still. If asked how to cope with a great host of the enemy in orderly array and on the point of marching to the attack, I should say, begin by seizing something which your opponent holds dear. Then he will be amenable to your will. Rapidity is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness, make your way by unexpected routes, and attack unguarded spots. The following are other principles to be observed by an invading force. The further you penetrate into a country, the greater will be the solidarity of your troops, and thus the defenders will not prevail against you. Make forays into fertile country in order to supply your army with food. Carefully study the well-being of your men and do not overtax them. Concentrate your energy and hoard your strength. Keep your army continually on the move and devise unfathomable plans. Throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape, and they will prefer death to flight. If they will face death, there is nothing they may not achieve. Officers and men alike will put forward their utmost strength. Soldiers, when in desperate straits, lose the sense of fear. If there is no place of refuge, they will stand firm. If they are in hostile country, they will show a stubborn front. If there is no help for it, they will fight hard. Thus, without waiting to be marshaled, the soldiers will be constantly on the move. Without waiting to be asked, they will do your will. Without restrictions, they will be faithful. Without giving orders, they can be trusted. Prohibit the taking of robes and do away with superstitious doubts. Then, until death itself comes, no calamity need be feared. If our soldiers are not overburdened with money, it is not because they have a distaste for riches. If their lives are not unduly long, it is not because they are disinclined to longevity. On the day they are ordered out to battle, your soldiers may weep, those sitting up bedewing their garments, and those lying down, letting the tears run down their cheeks. But let them once be brought to bay, and they will display the courage of a Chu or a Kui. The skillful tactician may be likened to the Shuayan. Now, the Shuayan is a snake that is found in the Zhong Mountains. Strike at its head, and you will be attacked by its tail. Strike at its tail, and you will be attacked by its head. Chapter 11 of The Art of War, by Sun Tzu, discusses the 7 varieties of ground and the principles to be observed in each situation. These 7 situations are as follows. 1. Dispersion ground. This refers to a chieftain fighting in his own territory. In such a situation, the chieftain should avoid direct confrontation and focus on defensive strategies. 2. Facile ground. When a chieftain has penetrated into hostile territory but has not advanced far, it is considered facile ground. In this situation, the chieftain should avoid staying in one place for too long and maintain mobility. 3. Contentious ground. This refers to ground that provides significant advantages to both sides. In such a situation, it is best to avoid direct confrontation and seek alternative strategies. 4. Open ground. This refers to ground where both sides have freedom of movement. When on open ground, it is not advisable to try to block the enemy's path, but rather focus on maneuvering and taking advantage of opportunities. 5. Ground of intersecting highways. This is ground that holds strategic importance, as it provides access to multiple regions. In this situation, it is beneficial to form alliances with neighboring forces to gain a stronger position. 6. Serious ground. When an army has penetrated deep into hostile territory and has left fortified cities in its rear, it is considered serious ground. In this situation, the army should focus on gathering resources and supplies. 7. Difficult ground. This refers to challenging terrain such as mountains, forests, and marshes. Chapter 12. The Attack by Fire. Sun Tzu said, "There are 5 ways of attacking with fire. The first is to burn the soldiers in their camp. The second is to burn stalls. The third is to burn baggage trains. The fourth is to burn arsenals and magazines. The fifth is to hurl dropping fire amongst the enemy." In order to carry out an attack, we must have means available. The material for raising fire should always be kept in readiness. There is a proper season for making attacks with fire and special days for starting a conflagration. The proper season is when the weather is very dry. The special days are those when the moon is in the constellations of the sieve, the wall, the wing, or the crossbar, for these 4 are all days of rising wind. In attacking with fire, one should be prepared to meet 5 possible developments. When fire breaks out inside the enemy's camp, respond at once with an attack, for without hesitation. If there is an outbreak of fire, but the enemy's soldiers remain quiet, bide your time and do not attack. When the force of the flames has reached its height, follow up with an attack if that is practicable. If not, stay where you are. If it is possible to make an assault with fire from without, do not wait for it to break out within, but deliver your attack at a favorable moment. When you start a fire, be to the windward of it. Do not attack from the leeward. A wind that rises in the daytime lasts long, but the night breeze soon falls. In every army, the 5 developments connected with fire must be known, the movements of the stars calculated, and a watch kept for the proper days. Hence, those who use fire as an aid to the attack show intelligence, and those who use water as an aid to the attack gain an accession of strength. By means of water, an enemy may be intercepted, but not robbed of all his belongings. Unhappy is the fate of one who tries to win his battles and succeed in his attacks without cultivating the spirit of enterprise, for the result is a waste of time and general stagnation. Hence, the same enlightened ruler lays his plans well, and the good general cultivates his resources. Move not until you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. Fight not unless the position is critical. No ruler should put troops into the field merely to gratify his own spleen. No general should fight a battle simply out of pique. If it is to your advantage, make a forward move. If not, stay where you are. Anger may in time change to gladness. Vexation may be succeeded by content. But a kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come back again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. Hence, the enlightened ruler is heedful, and the good general full of caution. This is the way to keep a country at peace and an army intact. Chapter 13. The Use of Spies. Sun Tzu said, "Raising a host of 100,000 men and marching them great distances entails heavy loss on the people and a drain on the resources of the state. The daily expenditure will amount to 1,000 ounces of silver. There will be commotion at home and abroad, and men will drop down exhausted on the highways. As many as 700,000 families will be impeded in their labor. Hostile armies may face each other for years, striving for the victory which is decided in a single day. This being so, to remain in ignorance of the enemy's condition simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver in honors and emoluments is the height of inhumanity. One who acts thus is no leader of men, no present help to his sovereign, no master of victory. Thus, what enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is knowledge. Now, this foreknowledge cannot be elicited from spirits. It cannot be obtained inductively from experience, nor by any deductive calculation. Knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can only be obtained from other men. Hence, the use of spies, of whom there are 5 classes: 1 local spies, 2 inward spies, 3 converted spies, 4 doomed spies, 5 surviving spies. When these 5 kinds of spies are all at work, none can discover the secret system. This is called divine manipulation of the threads. It is the sovereign's most precious faculty. Having local spies means employing the services of the inhabitants of a district. Having inward spies means making use of officials of the enemy. Having converted spies means getting hold of the enemy's spies and using them for our own purposes. Having doomed spies means doing certain things openly for purposes of deception and allowing our spies to know of them and report them to the enemy. Surviving spies, finally, are those who bring back news from the enemy's camp. Hence, it is that with none in the whole army are more intimate relations to be maintained than with spies. None should be more liberally rewarded, and in no other business should greater secrecy be preserved. Spies cannot be usefully employed without a certain intuitive sagacity. They cannot be properly managed without benevolence and straightforwardness. Without subtle ingenuity of mind, one cannot make certain of the truth of their reports. Be subtle, and use your spies for every kind of business. If a secret piece of news is divulged by a spy before the time is ripe, he must be put to death together with the man to whom the secret was told. Whether the object be to crush an army, to storm a city, or to assassinate an individual, it is always necessary to begin by finding out the names of the attendants, the aides de camp, and doorkeepers, and centers of the general in command. Our spies must be commissioned to ascertain these. The enemy spies who have come to spy on us must be sought out, tempted with bribes, led away, and comfortably housed. Thus, they will become converted spies and available for our service. It is through the information brought by the converted spy that we are able to acquire and employ local and inward spies. It is owing to his information again that we can cause the doomed spy to carry false tidings to the enemy. Lastly, it is by his information that the surviving spy can be used on appointed occasions. The end and aim of spying in all its 5 varieties is knowledge of the enemy, and this knowledge can only be derived, in the first instance, from the converted spy. Hence, it is essential that the converted spy be treated with the utmost liberality. Of old, the rise of the Yin dynasty was due to Aichi, who had served under the Hsia. Likewise, the rise of the Chou dynasty was due to Luya, who had served under the Yin. Hence, it is only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who will use the highest intelligence of the army for purposes of spying, and thereby they achieve great results. Spies are a most important element in warfare, because on them depends an army's ability to move.